Hello, everybody. This is Lauren Polly from Mental Wealth. I am so happy you've chosen to join me today talking about the hidden cost of high functioning. This is a Q&A based off of this 6-week series that I recently published up on Substack. If you haven't read it yet, you may want to go check that out for more in-depth info. But it's a conversation I've been having with myself, I would say, over the last couple of years, feeling a little bit burnt out, feeling a little bit tired, not overly, kind of what they would say maybe with a high functioning burnout, where there's just a little lack of interest. There's just a little bit less of a zhuzh where I would like it to at work, in life, in my relationships, all over. And I started really digging into, well, I know I'm high functioning. I know I have a lot of success. I know I do things at a high level. I think most of us do, even if you don't acknowledge that about yourself. A lot of us have very successful lives, and people look at you and kind of say, wow, how do you do all that? How do you manage the kids and the job and the house and the business and all the things? But we're not very honest with ourselves or each other sometimes with that hidden layer of exhaustion that goes underneath it. And really, what happens when we lose our spark to go a little bit deeper? So for me, I kind of went on this quest of like, well, where is the spark of life? Yes, outward stuff is continuing to move, but when my insides, my thoughts, my emotions, my body energy doesn't really match the outside level of success and care I'm giving others, there's something that's a little bit off. So that's kind of what opened up to this whole conversation about being high functioning, maybe a little bit of a perfectionist, maybe a little bit of an overachiever or overperformer, but also the hidden cost in that a lot of us just don't think about. So I wanted to start this conversation before we dive into the Q&A. First, knowing that you do not have to put questions in the chat. Please do if you're interested and you have something to say. I just know that sometimes these conversations are ones where people like to sit back and kind of absorb and maybe think a little bit deeper and ponder over a couple days. That's awesome. But if you do have something that you wanted to bring forward, there is a chat box, so you can put it in there and I'll read it out and answer. And thank you for those who sent me questions ahead of time. That actually helped kind of prep for this too. So before we get going, I want to pose a question to you to think about. So when you think about being high functioning, I want you to think, do you think about it and do you feel about it a sense of pride? Or do you think and feel about it with a sense of pressure? This was the hugest aha for me that I've had over the last maybe 5 years or so, of how much I was really pushing myself and being quite successful, but with a constant sense of pressure. Go, 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 more, 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 better, better, better. And it was such this undercurrent to my life that I didn't even really realize it anymore. Those of you who know me have been around the block a time or two with me in my past content, know that I manage a hospital department. My job is as a speech pathologist. So I've always worked in healthcare in a hospital with high pressure and time crunches, things like that, stats and everything. So there's always been that. But I started to notice even when I wasn't at work, even in personal conversations, even in creating my business, all these different things where there was just a sense of pressure. And unfortunately, what happens when you're high functioning, even if you have a lot of success, that undercurrent of pressure not only burns you out and exhausts you, but it can also keep you away from really having a sense of fulfillment with your success. We have this little bit of a mishmash because the pressure overrides the pride. So when we go back to that question, I really want you to play with deeper if you have big things in your life you're looking at right now, but even day to day, right now, am I really feeling pride in how I am presenting myself, what I'm doing in my life, or do I feel more of a sense of pressure? And that pressure sometimes is a pressure to perform, pressure to do everything correctly, pressure to care for everyone around you before you even look at your own needs. This shows up in a bunch of different ways. I've heard a lot of my questions that were sent in from you guys of people who might not have a huge career at this point, but maybe they're more of the perfect PTA mom, let's say. And it was interesting because those people who wrote in, they're like, I don't see myself as very successful professionally, but I'm starting to see where this Pride versus pressure conversation can really apply to the activities I do with my kids and the care that I provide. We overachieve in different ways. It's not just the accolades or the work conversation. This comes up in personal relationships all the time. So keep that in mind as we're talking. I just want you to kind of look where the pride versus the pressure comes into play. Let's talk about some of these questions. I'm just going to pull up my document if you see me reading here. One question that was sent in: how do I know if I'm actually high functioning or just responsible? This one's a really good one because I think that's the interesting thing when we think about overachieving or overperforming. A lot of times we have a big sense of responsibility. Again, going back to the mom example, you're responsible for your kids, right? Your family's health. At work, if you're in a management position like I am, there's a responsibility over your staff. If you run your own business, oh my goodness, you have a lot of responsibility because everything is depending on you, whether or not you move forward with certain things. You're the entire driver behind that business. So again, it comes into everything. And maybe look at your personal relationships too. Perhaps there's that overdrive too if you're more the dominant person in your partnership. The sense of responsibility for me, when I start to pick it apart, is when I go into overdrive, I'm overstepping their independence and their choice. When I go into high functioning, where it's more of a sense of control, I kind of need it to feel safe. I want to make sure everything looks good. A lot of times that's coming from an internal sense of myself, of not feeling like I'm maybe giving enough or showing up enough, or fear that whoever's on the other side of this isn't doing that either. So, what do? We tend to overcompensate, right? The sense of responsibility for me is one of great caring. It's a strength that you have. You care about your job and your business and your family and your friends. That's not wrong to feel responsible at all. Again, I think if you read the series, but also in this conversation, really holding in your awareness that it is not what you do, it is how you do it. And that is the huge distinction between high functioning and overachieving, going into control and perfectionism, and having these other beautiful qualities of being responsible, of caring, of performing at a high level, just naturally. So maybe the person who wrote that in, that's where I would maybe look at this responsibility versus high functioning question. Where and when are you overriding other people's choices around you? That might be high functioning. If you're feeling a little bit like a bulldozer, we don't know anything about that. Yes, we do. But also, really looking at that is a beautiful quality to be responsible and to care. So, not that you're doing anything wrong, but maybe how you're going about that. Maybe look to see if you take a breath before you respond to them. You take maybe 2 steps back or even lean back. I do this at work a lot, lean back, and giving them a sense to be able to step forward for themselves so that you're still responsible for the partnership, but you're not going into overdrive and high functioning with the outcomes of it. Okay. I love the next one. And this came again from my audience who did a lot of self awareness techniques with me in the past. It was, what's the difference between being self aware and over monitoring myself? I think we are in such an interesting society where there is wellness, self development, self improvement, health conversations going on everywhere we look. And regardless of where we're tuning in to get our information, everybody's got a piece of advice. It is fascinating to me how we're kind of getting a little bit hyper fixated on trying to constantly self evolve, self improve. Again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Nothing wrong with that. I am who's huge into self development and self awareness. It's one of the main things I teach. But how are you going about doing that? Again, I found this in myself, and it was interesting. I was in a huge self improvement community, facilitating content for years and years and years. And I would sit in classes sometimes where I wasn't facilitating them, but other people were. And the way the questions were getting asked and the way people were getting facilitated was that there was a problem that needed to be solved. There was something not quite right that needed to improve. And I totally get that on a personal level because I've had stuff obviously in my life where I'm like, now that I'm aware of this, it's very uncomfortable and I want it to change as quickly as possible. But when we go into that, what we're starting to go into is this over monitoring, this editing, and constantly harping, being hyper fixated on ourselves that this lady had submitted as a question. It's very different than being self aware, where it to me, when I hear the word self-aware, I think a lot about the yogic principle of being the observer or the great witness, where you are present, you're in the moment, but there's a degree of space, not necessarily separation, but there's a degree of breathing room where you are aware of how you are in that situation. Meaning you're not reactive, you're not on autopilot and checked out, right? That to me is being self aware, having the eyes on everything in the situation and knowing your impact that you're having on the people around you. This over monitoring changes how we do that, though. All of a sudden, there's a problem to be fixed. Again, that goes so far back, deeper, deeper, deeper into control and not having a sense of safety. We need to control every variable to be able to feel safe. For me, this always showed up as if the outside world was taken care of and calm, then maybe finally I can relax because I could always feel it. Very sensitive. I could always feel that pressure. And it's a fascinating thing because when we start looking at self development and being self aware, that same pressure again presents itself. So I feel like this is a very interesting, nuanced conversation. When I have this big teaching that I want to talk about today, which is it's not how or not what you do, it's how you do it. When I have those kind of conversations with myself and when I'm being self aware in my own environment to change it, I really want to look at opposing opposites. A really clean question that I can ask myself when I start to feel off a bit. So maybe in this circumstance, if you're looking at this difference, is am I being self aware here or am I over monitoring? And when you're asking these questions, it's just actually trusting your gut response to see, you know what? When I say that, what actually resonates with me is that I'm being a little over monitoring. I might be being a little critical, a little pressured. I may be trying to fix something because I'm not feeling super safe with the lack of control that I have right now. It's okay. The thing to do after you ask that question and you have that awareness, take a breath. Again, lean your physical body back a little bit. Get a little somatic cues in where you're like, okay, body, we're totally safe. It's perfectly fine. You don't need to overcorrect in this scenario. See if you can actually get a little bit more of that space so that you can be the great witness. You're not the great bulldozer in the moment where you're trying to override yourself into a perfect response. So I hope that helps. I feel like we're seeing a common theme here in this, right? One of the hidden costs with high functioning, besides the burnout and the hidden exhaustion, really is this undercurrent of pressure that keeps us from feeling successful and fulfilled. And a lot of times that's really coming down to brass tacks. It's not that you're doing anything incorrectly, it's not what you are doing, it's how you're going about it. And just be aware, this is very nuanced work. We're all learning and we all mess up, including myself. That was one of the questions that was actually sent in, which I thought was funny. Do you still notice yourself doing this? Yeah. Um, and a very fascinating, interesting point with that. I notice myself doing it because this is part of the way that I function as a human being. Maybe you can relate. And what I mean by that is I have a high degree of caring. If I can show up for other people and actually give them something, I'm going to do it. I have a high degree of integrity. If I show up to do something, I want to do it like 100%. I'm not someone who gives like 50%. I have 100% days, sometimes 1,000% days. That's a conversation I have of reeling it back in with myself. Um, but because I have this caring and this integrity, and sometimes just these natural gifts to really be able to show up and perform at a high level, we go a little bit into this thing where, oh, I'm programmed incorrectly. You're not. You're like me. You're programmed correctly. All of us are. And it's looking at these things as a natural gift that we have that get a bit hijacked by the world. Yes, this still shows up to me for me. It's going to keep showing up for you too, forever and always, because you already live on that edge. You have these gifts and these capacities: caring, being perceptive, integrity, being able to actually perform and get things done, maybe being a leader, right? You're always going to walk that knife edge of, am I actually being high functioning or responsible? Am I going into high functioning, or is it true caring right now? Am I going into control, or am I going into empowerment, right? It's not that anything is wrong that needs to be fixed at all. It's not what you're doing. But what I'm inviting you to look at is there a different way to go about what you're already doing in a way that gives you a sense of safety, gives you a sense of relaxation, that you can maybe loosen the grips of control that you have right now? And more importantly, actually being able to relax into your success and enjoy the ride along the way. It is not what you are doing, it's how you're doing it. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with the way you are programmed. There's nothing wrong with me either. But again, you just have to be very aware, because this knife edge of going a little bit into pressure and a little bit into performance and not into actual presence is just a possibility that we all have. It's a ship that you are able to right very, very easily once you actually are able to get that observer, great witness stance. So I don't want to overpack this. I feel like this is a great conversation point. If you have not read my series yet, please go on over to my channel. There's 6 different articles digging into the need for safety and control and, nervous system stuff, basically all the things that can come when we're living more from the pressure of high functioning versus just the possibility and the pride in being what we naturally are, which is caring, high achieving, integrity driven people who show up for each other. Nothing wrong with that at all. Let's just see what we can do to get a little bit cleaner with how we use it, let's say. All right. Well, this was so fun. Thank you for joining me live, and thank you for joining me after. Please put some more questions or thoughts in the chat. I'm going to come back and actually respond to the thread. If you're watching in the future, just know that that's a possibility. I'll come back and we can see what we can dig in together. But we'll pick this up next time. All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks.